Welcome back, everybody. The Trump administration is working to hold accountable those people who weaponized the Justice Department under President Biden, as well as those who were involved in the bogus Russiagate investigations before and during President Trump's first term. James Comey, John Bolton, Letitia James, they have all been the first dominoes to fall. But will there be more, and should there be? We also have an update on a story that we brought to you last year on the killing of Brian Malinowski in that deadly pre-dawn raid by the ATF. So joining us now is the lawyer representing the Malinowski family and former U.S. Attorney Bud Cummins. Bud, great to see you on the show.
Great to see you.
You know, Bud, anytime I have a conversation with you, you consistently remind me that truth is the engine of our judicial system, and it bears out across this entire conversation that we're having with you. But when it comes to James, we want to see truth at the center of those cases. Is it?
Well, you know, it's funny, you guys. I've been invited to join an amicus brief that's some 30 pages long that I will not sign, former Department of Justice officials who are quoting those exact things. Truth is the engine of our government, and all the virtue signaling principles that we as prosecutors were supposed to follow. And I agree with all of them, but they're totally silent on the dramatic violations of all those principles that occurred over 10 or plus years leading up to the prosecution of Jim Comey. They're focusing on Jim Comey and saying his prosecution is vindictive, but they don't condemn his conduct or the conduct of so many others over the last years. And I simply won't sign on to something like that. If we're going to condemn an abuse of authority, we need to condemn it across the board.
Yeah, that's so important. But over the last year particularly, we've gotten more and more insight into who the Biden administration, who the Obama-Biden Justice Department viewed as enemies: gun owners, Second Amendment advocates, people who were Catholics and believed in the Latin Mass or practiced the Latin, parents who would dare challenge the school board about their child's education. It's a growing body of people. It looks as though there was almost an enemy's profile, and then there was action that flowed from it. Give us the latest on the Brian Malinowski case. He seems to fit one of those profiles of a Second Amendment advocate. Tell us what we should know.
Well, and not a very vocal one. Brian Malinowski was a professional. He was a well-respected director of the Little Rock Airport, which is unfortunately called the Bill and Hillary Clinton National Airport, but I call it the Little Rock Airport. He was very successful there, and he was a hobbyist. He collected coins, he collected firearms, and he went out occasionally on a Saturday and rented a table at local gun shows and bought and sold and traded coins and guns and other artifacts like a lot of people do at gun shows. He was laying in bed with his wife an hour before sunup on March 19, 2023, and they heard their front doors crash in. And he had no reason to know he was under investigation, no reason to know that anybody thought he'd done anything wrong. And he got out of bed and grabbed a pistol to defend his wife, took a shot at the intruders, and they blew his brains out. They were the ATF. They'd come with an entire SWAT team to raid his home and search and execute a search warrant as if he was some kind of a cartel kingpin. And yes, that would never happen in any Republican administration during my lifetime, because they were trying to basically attack with something they didn't like politically. The fact that some people, hobbyists, are allowed to go to gun shows and buy and sell guns without doing a bunch of paperwork. That's what Brian was doing.
But if I
could
just slip in, if Brian Malinowski had been asked to surrender, would he have surrendered peacefully instead of having to raid his home?
Of course. Everybody that knew Brian Malinowski knew that he loved his career as an airport director. It's highly regulated, FAA regulations left and right. If anybody had suggested to him that anything he was doing in his spare time on a Saturday afternoon was going to jeopardize his career, he would have backed off. And in fact, the ATF in other situations where they're concerned about somebody's hobbyist activity at a gun show has sent cease and desist letters. And that would have been the appropriate thing in his case.
Yeah. But ideally, at any organization, you want folks to be equal parts patriot and equal parts leader. When the ATF came forward after this and you had conversations with them, did they express any any leadership when it came to finding the truth about it? Any remorse as far as what had taken place? Anything at all?
The only statements we've ever heard, basically, what the ATF is trying to sell is two things. One is they're trying to suggest that Brian Malinowski was what they call a significant gun trafficker. The second thing they're trying to suggest is that he somehow knew when he got out of bed that there were law enforcement coming in his front door, that had just broken down his front door, and that he intentionally decided to shoot it out with law enforcement. Both of those are easily disproved by the facts in the Arkansas State Police investigation and in ATF's own affidavit in their search warrant. But that's all they've maintained, is that they had no choice. It was self-defense on their part, and they just can't explain why this professional citizen who was doing what he was doing in front of God and everybody at gun shows decided to shoot it out with police and I guess commit suicide. It's pretty offensive, really. It's pretty offensive that they would suggest that, and I think it's been over a year and a half, and I think it's time for the leadership at DOJ to independently look at this and not allow ATF to try to sell that story for another day. Yeah,
I understand the frustration that must be with that family. Let me turn to the narrative of Jim Comey. There's a lot of people today that suggest he's a victim, but the truth of the matter is there's pretty strong evidence that he had a hard time telling the American people the truth of what was really going on in his shop. They didn't get it right with the FISA. He signed bad FISA warrants. He leaked classified information in a memo as soon as he was fired by President Trump. Is there more that the American people need to know about James Comey, and should the Justice Department give it to us?
Well, I don't know that there's anything else that's actionable in the form of a prosecution, but I don't think there's no doubt that Jim Comey abused his authority. There's no doubt that he cherry-picked which cases he wanted to investigate over the top, which not coincidentally always involved Donald Trump as a target, and which ones he wanted to shut down or ignore, which not coincidentally involved Hillary Clinton, her email, her destruction of evidence, and the Clinton Foundation. So we can go all along the way, and you see these arrogant decisions made by Jim Comey that he didn't think he would ever be held accountable for. And what he's charged with now, it doesn't matter if the prosecutor hates his guts. It's not vindictive prosecution if they have a provable case. And from where I stand, it looks like it's very clear that he lied to Congress and that he obstructed justice. So like so many people he has made throughout his career, he's now going to be made to defend himself, spend the time, money, and see what he can do to defend himself. But there's nothing unjust about that. No, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Indeed. Bud, before we let you go, I want to get your take on also the John Bolton, same type scenario where the left is trying to say you're going after, you're weaponizing. These 18 charges, though, these were secured in an area of Virginia that people might not think that they would levy charges against someone like this or approve those charges at any rate. So do you anticipate that is a sign of the success of these charges against him? What do you anticipate is going to happen?
Well, as a prosecutor, you're supposed to take into account what's the likelihood of proving the case in front of a jury of 12 people, and it only takes one of those people to vote against conviction to hang the jury. And so, in jurisdictions like the Eastern District of Virginia, or certainly in Washington D.C., the likelihood of convicting somebody in a politically charged case like this that's on the left or a Democrat, or in John Bolton's case is opposed to Donald Trump. It'll be a pretty hard task to convict him or Comey, but it's certainly just to have them stand in open court and answer for their conduct and the arrogance that they exercise in blatantly violating laws. Just, I guess, that they didn't think applied to them.
Is it enough, Bud, as my dad would say, is it enough to scare him good?
I think it's plenty to scare him good, and because exactly. Specifically in Comey's case, they're simple charges and they're fairly it's fairly apparent what happened. So it'll have to be the jury that lets him go,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, we will see. Hopefully, it sends a message that you can't manipulate the law and you can't break the law without repercussions. Always great to have you here, Bud Cummins, former U.S. Attorney. Thanks so much.
Thank you all for having me.
Absolutely great to see you, Bud. All right, everybody, we've got to take a very quick commercial break, but we'll be right back in just a few minutes.
Hey, America, the FBI has been warning about a type of real estate fraud on the rise called home title theft, and your equity is the target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on a single document, use a fake notary stamp, then file it with the county, and just like that, boom, they're on record as owning your home. Using your ownership, they then take out loans against your equity or even sell your property, and you're not going to know about it until you get a foreclosure or collection notice in the mail, and that's not going to be a good moment. That's why I partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can protect your equity and find out today if you're already a victim. Use my promo code JTN at HometitleLock.com. You'll get a free title history report and a free child. Their $1 million triple lock protection. That's a great deal. $1 million to protect your home. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title records, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud occurs, their U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix it. Find out why I trust Home Title Lock. Protect yourself like I did. Don't be a victim. Protect your equity today. Go to HometitleLock.com and use that promo code JTN. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code JTN.